Hello again, everybody. Fiber Spider back again with a different kind of a game for you. Yes, hope all of you are doing really well today. I'm doing spiffy because I get to choose something new that I think you might like. Yes, this is a little game called Apawthecaria, P-A-W, and this is a storytelling game and a journal writing game and a role-playing game all wrapped up into one, and it is cute, it is cozy, and I've been sitting on this for a while. I just hadn't gotten around to playing it, and I finally decided to give it a try and also to share my results with you. Yeah. Um, as much as I like role-playing games and that sort of thing, so many of them rely upon playing with others, and I'm pretty much a solitary spider myself, so I looked into varying other kinds of role-playing games, and one particular mechanic is journal writing, where you use a deck of cards, which I have around here somewhere. You use a deck of cards and the prompts in the book to further along your story. Now, as far as this game is concerned, welcome to the bristly woods, a forest full of beasts who need your help. Play as a tiny animal from the Guild of Poultice Pounders, making remedies for local beasts as you go on grand journeys with your familiar sidekick. Explore Scotland's varied landscapes as seasons change, reagents bloom and fade, and the beasts of the bristly woods adapt to survive. Go on adventures spanning all 4 seasons across bogs, lochs, mountains, ancient Titan ruins, devious behemoth barrows, and beyond. Bum bum bum. And so I decided to give this a try, and I made up a character, and I wrote him a little bit of a backstory, and then I decided to go on my first adventure. I didn't get very far. I only played 1 session, and I found it to be quite relaxing, actually, almost meditative in a way, because I got to flesh out a story that made sense, with regard to the events that were going on and so forth. You'll see what I mean, but I really, really do like this. Now, initially, I got the book, and I love it. There are a lot of really nice, cute illustrations in here. For instance, whoa, I don't know why that just went blue. Little hedgehogs and birds and squirrels and stoats and all sorts of critters. Absolutely adorable. One problem, one caveat to this particular book, the binding. Yes, the binding, bit of an issue, because with all of the constant flicking back and forth, because there are tables that you need to refer to, as far as, when you draw a card, that determines some sort of event or outcome, or what is the ailment that you need to cure. What is the travel encounter that happens every time you need to draw a card. You need to flick through the book and find that particular thing. There's a whole section on ailments. I've got paper clips galore going on in here, and then there are reagents, which are the ingredients, whether it's flower petals or, for instance, river mint or rhubarb or red caps. Was that red? No, red sap, excuse me. Pearls or whisker burner or white willow, all sorts of things. So you have to do a lot of flicking around throughout the book, and it has meant that the binding has taken quite a beating. I will be the first to say so, and a couple of the pages have already fallen out as a result. Here's a couple more that have fallen out, which I've taped back in. So I also got the PDF version of this game as well to make it a little bit easier. So one caveat to this game, as much as I love it, the book, they should have made it a spiral bound, quite frankly. I think that would have been better. But I know that's a lot to take in 5 minutes, right? I'm well aware that is a lot to take in. But I wanted to give you sort of like a generalized overview of what this game is like. In a nutshell, you have a journey, trying to go from like point A to point B or complete a certain goal. And as you travel across the map, and it does come with a map, which I will show you in a bit, you travel throughout the map, stopping at different places. When you stop at a place, there is what's called a travel encounter. And you draw a card, and then you go and do what is prompted, and you write about it. And then after doing the travel encounter, well, then you have to buckle down for the evening. You have to have food, you have to have shelter, etc. And so to get that, you have to do a friendly favor, which means curing an ailment of some beast in the area. And then after finding out what the ailment is, again, with a draw of a card, you then need to find the ingredients in the area and see if you can find those, again, with the draw of a card. I think it's a rather clever mechanic, and I think it's pretty solid. I like that. But like I said, flicking through all the pages back and forth and researching what you need to do takes a beating on the binding. So that's my only complaint, I would say. But I think it's absolutely a charming game. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what happened on my very first adventure. Yes, I'm not a poet laureate, okay? I wouldn't say that my writing skills are, astounding by any means. However, it's a fun, cozy, relaxing sort of exploration, if you will. I don't know. You tell me what you think after we're done with the little adventure. So yeah, let's hop in, shall we? Alrighty. Okay, so to give you an idea of the world at large as far as Bristly Woods is concerned, we have the map. And it is rather extensive indeed. And there are tons of little pathways and rivers and mountains and bogs and meadows and all sorts of things. Now, I started out, I'm going to zoom way in here. I started out at the settlement of, I don't know if it's Odd Oak or Ud Oak or what have you, but yeah, I started out right there, and then I decided to travel around, and I'll read my narration based off of that, and then the little green squiggle and then the circle down below, that is where I traveled to in just one session, which it took me longer than I expected, but that's because I'm getting used to the mechanics of the game and so forth, but I was successful. So, that being said, let's start at the beginning, shall we? Okay. And so I created my character. He's a rabbit. Yes, he is, because I have an affinity for rabbits and a couple of others, but I do I do like rabbits. And apparently, well, okay, he's a hare specifically, and a nickname for a male rabbit is Jack. And I thought, okay, we'll call him Jack. And another word for a baby hare is a leveret, so I decided to call him Jack Leveret. I know how very much I'm taking things very literally here, right? And also, I have a familiar as well. We'll get into him. And so, as far as my traveling style, I decided on rambling and ready, which means I can travel 3 of those dots, 3 paths in one quick succession. My first journey, I only traveled 2 because I didn't want to go too far. And I can carry up to a weight of 4. And you do have to carry things, whether they are ingredients or tools, etc. I've got a belt knife, which is for gaining foraging points. I've got a wooden mortar and pestle, which is for grinding and crushing reagents. And I've got a battered camp kettle, which is for boiling or brewing reagents. And so let's go with my intro, shall we? And I wrote everything down in this little book. Hello to you, my dear Hopkins. I'm Jack Leverett, and at your service. I come from a modest family of hares, the youngest of 5. My fine mother was the very image of doting and care from as early as I can recall. Caring for a litter such as ours by herself was no easy task, I'm sure. Father was taken elsewhere when I was too young to remember more than his silhouette. Quick side reference, elsewhere is essentially a nice way of saying death. That's the interpretation of passing on, if you will, in this game. It's called elsewhere. So, my little nod to that. And back to the story. Mother managed, though as best she could, and there were others too. There was a kindly old badger that lived nearby. She was a poultice pounder by trade that lived under the roots of a massive oak tree. I never knew her real name, but we all called her Nan. Always busy she was, looking for plants, helping those in need. She was never too busy for little me, though, bless her. One afternoon, she found me fretting away by myself, sat me on her knee, and asked what the matter was. I'm too little. Where was I? I'm too little, I cried. I'm sorry, it's my handwriting as well. I'm too little, I cried. The others are too fast and won't play with me. Smiling with understanding, Smiling with understanding, I didn't then have, she said. Little ones grow into doers of great deeds, and so it shall be with you. It was then that I felt I could amount to a useful creature by helping those around me. It was Nan that opened my little eyes and taught me to see the potential in myself and the ways of healing through nature's gifts. I know. Usually I don't read aloud, if you will, live, as it were. I know this is not a live video, but you know what I mean. No editing here. So that's sort of my backstory, how I decided to become a poultissier or poultice pounder, how I was inspired by Nan the Badger. Then there's my brother Shadow. Not coming from the same family made no difference to the likes of us. Ever since we were knee-high to dandelions, we were inseparable. Found each other at a brook one day. I was looking for mushrooms, while he was looking at his rippling reflection, always transfixed by things either shiny or resembling himself. In spite of his quirky vanity, he's always been a faithful friend. When not chumming along at my side, he flits from tree to tree faster than any old squirrel. Perhaps I forgot to mention that my dear brother is a crow. Yeah, so Shadow, he is my familiar, and as such, we travel along together, and he helps me out with one of his abilities, his quirks, and his is helpful. It fits. So I start my ailments with a timer of +2, which means I've got 2 more turns in order to find the ingredients in time to make the remedy to heal the ailment. If you run out of hours, if you run out of time, then there can be consequences. So that was the boon, the advantage that I chose for Shadow to have. There are others where it makes the ingredients easier to find, or bartering is easier when you're at settlements or cities, but that's the one that I chose. So, as for the journey at hand, after a long winter, it is time to get back out into the bristly wood. Months of staying close to home have been a comfort, but getting my paws moving will be good for me. Besides, a fellow guildmate requests that I survey around for a fortnight to examine and compare local conditions. It may not be a grand adventure, but it'll help me to get my bearings once again. All right, and then I also have a keepsake as well, which is a trinket, and I drew some cards to determine what that would be. And so the 3 cards that I got meant that the keepsake trinket was a tchotchke. It was made out of grasses or plant fibers, and it was also tattered and sentimental. My first trinket and keepsake is a small figurine of a hare, not unlike myself. Nan made it herself out of twigs wrapped with dried flax. It's many seasons old and worn with care. I would hate to part with it, but know I might one day have to in time of great need. Trinkets are a form of currency. They can be earned and used much like you would money. I mean, beasts don't have any use for money, but yeah, so that is the backstory, if you will. And, you can flesh out your character however which way you want, and there are various prompts that you can, enact upon and write down, and you can make this as detailed or as simplistic as you want. I wanted to have this have a little bit of a fleshed out quality to it. And, well, without further ado, let's get into the actual adventure that I decided to embark upon. Let's go. Setting out on my adventure, I decided by whim to head southwest, passing Oddbridge, or Oadbridge, and continue just past it eastward to a forested region. That was that little green mark from before. So I then drew a card for a travel encounter, and I got an 8 of hearts. In this case, the suit wasn't, relevant, but I got an 8. So from that one, it was called From Up on High. Now, to give you an idea of what the encounter actually said, I wrote down the page number, 78. There we go. Okay, so From Up on High, and that's if you draw a 7 or an 8. So, beasts crowd around a Titan object just off the path. They say it fell out of a tree. A Titan is, my understanding of a Titan is a human. And there are residual structures, residual things that have been left behind by the humans. So apparently a Titan object fell out of a tree just off the path. Look around the space you are in and choose an object to inject into the scene. How does your poultice pounder misunderstand its true purpose of function? And underneath that it says, the gift of knowledge. You can draw a sketch with a nominal weight to it. So you can draw a sketch of this mysterious artifact and add it to your bags. So then you can either trade it to the craft paws. When in a city, you can trade this sketch to a craft paw representative in exchange for a local reagent of any value, which could be rather helpful. Or during downtime, you can trade it to the knowers. So during downtime, at the end of your journey, which will be the end of my entire quest, if you will, a mysterious magpie will find you. If you give this sketch to them, they will reward you with 5 trinkets or a tool of your choosing. And quite frankly, there is a tool that would be really helpful. It is I believe a waxed sack or pouch, if you will, which will be really helpful for traveling through waterways, because if you go through a waterway on the map, all of your stuff gets soaked and your ingredients get destroyed in the process. So that would be helpful. But back to the story. Okay, so my travel encounter was From Up on High. So walking along the well-beaten path, I was met by a small group of squirrels, all chittering in confused excitement. Pointing to a large metallic cylinder, one exclaimed, "Fell out of that tree, it did." The tree itself looked very old and, oddly, didn't have any branches. Its smooth surface and lack of bark are unusual indeed. As for the cylinder, it looks like a kind of drum for making music, although its sound doesn't compare with the musicians back in Odd-Oak. Shadow pecks at its surface and cocks his head as if in question. Odd, but interesting. So I decide to draw a sketch of this oddity and save it for someone who may shine a light on what it may be. So then I added the sketch to my inventory. And my explanation was that it was perhaps a power transformer that fell off of a telephone pole. I was thinking, what could fall out of a tree? I'm like, well, what if the tree isn't really a tree? What if it was like an old, utility pole? I don't know. That's the whole thing behind storytelling. I thought, it could work. All right. So we did the travel encounter, and now for the ailment aspect, because you always have to deal with things in succession here. So before the day is done, perhaps I can be of some service to someone here. So then I drew 2 cards for the patient, the King of Clubs and the Nine of Clubs, and then the ailment, a Jack, which is tick bitten, twice shy. Now the King of Clubs and the Nine of Clubs, that led me to end up with my patient being a distant bat. Yeah, I did have some choice, but I thought those two together, that'd be interesting. So back to the story. Just off the path, I notice a bat by itself, not saying anything, but pretending that she's not watching me. I saunter over slowly with Shadow and ask if she saw the object fell. "I was on it while it fell," she says with a slight grumble. I perched up there from time to time since I left my old tree, scratching behind her ear vigorously, obviously frustrated. She says her name is Mabs, and tells me that in spite of how much she'd like to go back to her old home, her new problem is of irritating concern. Turns out that Mabs has a case of ticks, making their home, and have set up residence in her tufted ears. Poor dear. So we have the ailment, which is tick bitten, twice shy, and we have to help poor Mabs by finding the curative. And, well, then going through the indexes of various reagents and ingredients and so forth. Tick bitten, twice shy has 2 tags that I have to find reagents for in order to cure. Parasite 1 and fur or feather 2. And so different ingredients cure different tags. There's, parasites, there's fever, there's, rashes, there's all sorts of things that, need curing. So I went through the list of reagents and, went based on not only the location that they're found in, but also the seasons that they are likely to be found in. There's a lot of tables, to go through and so forth, but it's clear to do, but there's a lot of shuffling through pages involved. So there's burdocks and wild violets, and both of those ingredients are good for parasite as well as fur or feather. And then there was also animal sheddings as well that could have been used. And so I drew a card to see if I would succeed in finding one of those ingredients. So the card that you draw, the number on it, is in relation to the level of difficulty in finding it. Burdock was a 3. Just so happens that I drew a card with a 3 on it. So, I believe it was the 3 of clubs. So, knowing the situation and having plenty of time, I decide to stay where I am and look for what's at hand. Already off to a good start, I find some burdock, not missing the opportunity to hop 2 frogs in one leap. I harvest some stems and roots. So I harvested the stems and the roots of the burdock. Then, because I collected something, there was also another foraging element to it. Just like we had an encounter, a travel encounter, there's also a foraging encounter. So yes, I did manage to find the burdock, but then we had a foraging encounter as well. So with that same card, the 3, the foraging encounter was, I'm trying to find what it was called exactly. I'm sorry. So the foraging encounter, I know, me and my notes, right? Let's see, it was forest and it was a 3. Okay, so because it was a 3 that I drew for collecting the burdock, well, the foraging encounter, the 3, it was the collector. So the prompt was, you come across an avid forager who is excited to show you their collection. Collections Development Policy. You may swap a reagent part of your own for any reagent part that can be found in the forest. I'm like, ooh, okay. So now I had collected the stems and the roots. Now, I didn't need the roots. I needed just the stems, but I did need an additional reagent for curing the parasite element, if I'm not mistaken. So, that being said, as I collect my supplies, one of the squirrels from before scampers over. Turns out he is an avid collector. Only too happy to show me his trove of findings, my eye is caught by a small cluster of wild violets. With a paw shake, we agree to a swap, my roots for his flowers. Turns out he fancies a snack, so then I gain the flowers of the wild violet. So then I have the ingredients that I need, the wild violet flowers and the burdock stems. Then to make the concoction, the curative for poor Mabs. So the flowers can be applied and the burdock needs to be ground. So let's get this potissier in business. I set to work grinding the burdock stems into a fine pulp. Hopping over to Mabs, I daub the paste in and around her ears and adorn them with violet petals. Not sure if the chagrined expression on her face is embarrassment over how she looks or not. At least she can get some relief from the constant scratching. As the remedy was so easy and the first of my journey, I give it to Mabs as a gift, in spite of her distant personality. So because I decided to gift the remedy to her ailment, I gained 2 reputation points. I started off with 5, being a relatively unknown, but if I get up to 15, then my reputation gives me certain benefits, but also makes some of the potential ailments a bit more dire and more difficult to find the ingredients for. And also, because the relatively low severity of tick bitten twice shy, I gain another reputation point. So I got 3 reputation points out of the deal. Not bad. In thanks, she gives Shadow and me some cakes of millet, but doesn't invite me back to her tree for the evening. In the dying light, I spy some thistles, collect some, and retire for the night nestled in an abandoned bolt hole. It may not scream of comfort, but it'll do for the evening. Tomorrow, I think I will backtrack to Odd Oak. I would like to inquire about my sketch and perhaps get a trade out of it. Now, because I had tons of time left over after doing my foraging and procuring the remedy, I had like 10, 11 more turns based on the severity of the ailment. So that being said, I decided to do some local foraging, and that's how I ended up with the thistles, which specifically I collected the spike heads of the thistles, and those can cure a level of 2 fur, the tag of fur, and they can be applied. So that was one little segment of the potential totality of my my journey to do some surveying. And so as a result of one day, now I've got a total of 12 days, and you mark them on the calendar. That installment, that episode, if you will, was but one day. I've got 11 more days to survey 2 more areas of the forest region, or if I want to do a different kind of region, I'm going to have to do a total of 3. But there you go. So that was my little adventure that I went on the other evening, and I really liked it. You know, like I said, it has a very, very cozy kind of vibe to it, and I've never really been good at creative writing, and at least I don't think so. And I'm more of a journal writing as far as it pertains to my actual life, as opposed to the life of a fictitious character. Um, but I do really, really love the warm and fuzzies that I get as a result. And being a different species altogether is, I think, a rather novel idea. And so, yeah, overall, I think it is quite enjoyable, and you also can play it not just by yourself, but you can also play with others as well through various mechanics like having a pen pal. And this book does go into a couple of means as to how you could play with other people. I'm fine with playing this solo at my own pace. And so as I proceed, you know, I will go to different locations on the map, tracking my progress, and I think it's rather cute, and I think it's kind of fun. And it gives me an opportunity to slow down, especially since I'm writing it out longhand and so forth. Um, I, I I like it. I do. Again, I'm going to harp on this. Yes, I know. But again, the binding is, it's not great. It's really not great. I'm half tempted to tear out all of the pages and put them into plastic sleeves in a small binder. I have half a mind to do that, but um, that's why I also got the PDF. And this video, not sponsored at all in any which way. I will put a link where you can find this if you're interested. It's not a sponsored link or a promotional thing or anything like that. No. But you know, if you're interested in finding it, there you go. I believe the PDF was, I think, 19, and the book itself was, I think, I want to say like 30 something thereabouts. I do really like the style of the writing and the various illustrations and things. I think it's very cute. I do. And everything is nicely color coded. But the binding, I know, I keep whinging about that. I do. I know. But I think it is absolutely adorable. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. If you guys are, I don't know, if you're interested, perhaps I could relate another chapter of my tale, you know, and you can get even more of an idea of the different kinds of predicaments and discoveries I make. You know, it could be fun, you know, and just putting it out there as food for thought if you guys are interested in hearing more of my adventures. That being said, have you played this before, or have you played a game similar in its format and concept before? You know, a journal writing solo role-playing game? I don't know. You tell me. Let me know. And so, that being said, I want to thank you for watching today. I hope you liked it. And if you did, please give a little thumbs up button down below, because you know that I appreciate your appreciation as always. And whether I am playing a game of one sort or another, excuse me, I'm a little tongue-tied, all that reading. Or if I'm doing crocheting or knitting or cooking up something in the kitchen, I love variety, and this is another ingredient. It's the spice of life. I like variety. So whether I'm doing this, that, or the other, there's always more to see on this channel. And stay tuned for more. Yes, hit that subscribe button. And you'll get notifications, when I post, which is usually on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Saturdays being tutorials, of one sort or another. That being said, again, want to thank you so much for joining me, and you know what to do until next time, right? I want all of you to stay inspired, stay caffeinated, stay curious about the world, stay creative in it, and take care of yourselves and each other, and I will see you in my next video. Bye for now, everybody, and have a great day.